Welcome to the Fluffy Cow Studio. For you who are just joining us for the first time, thank you for popping in and welcome. For you who have joined us before, welcome and thank you. If you guys like what you're seeing today, please hit the like button. If you want to share it with your friends, go right ahead. And if you'd like to see more content like this, please hit the subscribe button. We're trying to get 100 subscribers. Once we get 100, we are going to have a drawing for a cute little fluffy cow that we will be making. Today we're going to be making a fluffy cow inside an Uncle Sam hat. These things are very inexpensive to make and they're very cute. They make very good gifts. And let's get started. We will start with a pot, a lid from a pot, cardboard, a cardboard core, and some scrap paper. I'm drawing my circle here, and then I'm just going to put my hat on to see if I like the size of that, because I couldn't remember which size I used, so I went with the smaller size, put my core on, decided I like that better. I'll be cutting up to the line that I want to use, and I'm going to just keep making clips all the way up because it's easier to cut the cardboard that way. Once I get these cardboard strips cut, I will begin cutting around the circle. I'm just cutting along the edge. Okay, now I took this core that I have. It holds stickers and I get them at work when they get empty, and so I took this is 4 inches, and I cut my scrapbook paper to 4 inches. This is very thick paper. I'm going to be gluing it on with Mod Podge, and I'm putting a very thick layer because it's thick paper. And please excuse my sassy cat. She always seems to think she needs to be in the center of everything I'm doing. She thinks she's helping, but I don't know that she's helping too much. And I'm just going to do this section at a time because, like I said, this is thick paper, and I'm just kind of trying to keep the edge, keep it to the edge of the roll, the cardboard core tube. If you don't have cardboard, you can use cans. Cans will work fine. Anything that you can find that's round. But just adjust things to the size of your can or whatever core you're using. We went to Pennsylvania last summer and we was gone for a month. When we come home, my little sassy cat has gotten so clingy that she never leaves my side anymore. So I'm just going to take that all the way around, get all the little bubbles, wrinkles, whatever out. Then I'm going to take it to the end, and I will be cutting the excess off. And then I will be Mod Podging that seam, make sure it's good and tight and secure. Then I will go over it with a very thick coat of Mod Podge because this paper is very thick, good quality. I got this paper at Hobby Lobby. They were having a sale on the patriotic stuff, and so it didn't end up costing very much, and even when they're not on sale, they're not too much money. It was just a single sheet. Now I'm just going over this, and I'm going to set it aside and let it dry. Then I'm going to take my cardboard that I cut out, the brim of the hat, and I'm going to paint it white. And yes, this cardboard is white, so why am I doing it? I just want to do it as a protective precaution. to put an extra layer of caution, or an extra layer of protection on it. And if you want to, when you get through here, you can either Mod Podge over the top of it or spray it with a sealer. Mine is not going to go outside, so I'm just going to skip that part. Now I'm taking my ruler and I am drawing lines, the width of the ruler down this, across this circle. Now you want to do both sides. I did one coat on both sides of this cardboard. Because it is cardboard, I did not want to use tape to make my lines because I was afraid it would rip up the paint and everything else. So I'm just going to use my ruler and freehand it. Now I'm going to take my ruler and set it aside alongside the edge of that red stripe, and now I'm going to paint another red stripe. When I get through here, I will wipe down the ruler with a paper towel, but I wished I would have used a baby wipe, because then it wouldn't have got my little smudge some paint on the white part. But that's okay, we'll fix it in the end. So I'm going to put that ruler over that area next to the, line it up against the red stripe, and now I am going to make another red stripe. I ended up putting 3 coats of the red on. It is apple red from Apple Barrel, but it's kind of at the end of the bottle, and it's very old, so I think it's not quite as good quality as it would be if it was new. You can also use chalk paint on this if you would rather, and you can use your favorite color of red now, or whatever color you want. You don't have to paint these in patriotic. You can paint them any way you want. I made about 30 of these, actually a little bit more than that, for Christmas gifts for the people I work with and neighbor gifts last year. For Christmas, we made snowman hats, and I did not put little animals in them. I put either candy, or I think I put a can of Sprite and said, "May your Christmas be merry and Sprite," or something like that. Because I had so many of them, I couldn't afford to put them all, fill them all with candy. But then I'm taking my scissors on this. While that's drying, I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut the excess paper off. And then I'll be taking some sandpaper and just sanding down downward to get the edges off and to smooth it out. Now I'm going to go over that with white again. I did do 2 coats of white actually after I got the stripes on, because I needed to cover up the red. And if you do like I did and get a little red on, it may take more than 2 coats. However, you can cover it up pretty good. I ended up putting 3 coats of red on our stripes. Okay, just gonna touch up. Now I'm going to be painting a star that I got them in a package of about 8 or something. They were in, I got them from Hobby Lobby. They weren't very much money, and they're about 3 inches. I'm doing the front and the back and the sides of these because it could be possible you could see the star from the back side. Now I'm going to let that dry, and then I will paint the back. And of course I get paint all over my hands. Now I'm going to take some blue. It is English Ivory, or English Navy, sorry, English Navy. And I am going to paint the inside of that tube, that cardboard tube. And I am as well going to paint the edges. If you wanted to make these a little bit bigger, you might even could use one of those oak containers. Do they still make them in the round ones? I don't know. And just cut it down to the size you want it to be. And these just worked good for me. And I just gathered a bunch up and brought them home. Okay, now I'm going to let that dry, and I'm just going to dry brush along the edges of that star with very little paint. Just kind of giving it a highlight, or a shading, I mean. You can see it's not really bright. Then I'm going to take some Chanel tinsel pipe cleaner, and I am going to go all the way around that star, gluing it with hot glue. Once we get that to the top, or where we started from, then I will clip it off with a pair of scissors and set it aside. Now I'm going to take my hat, and I'm going to kind of place that, the top part of it, where on the brim where I want it, in the middle. Make sure you get it in the middle. I am using E6000, and I am using hot glue. If I don't do that with the hot glue, don't use, then it will sometimes slide and become off center. Now I'm taking some Dollar Tree ribbon, the sparkly red kind, and I made a band out of it, just wrapped it around and glued it on to the edge of the top part of the hat. Now I'm taking some greenery, and I'm just gonna decorate the front part of our hat, the brim of our hat, for a bit. I'm gonna use a couple different colors of greenery to give it some depth and interest. Okay, and now I'm gonna glue that star right on the center of that, and I will be gluing these little red these little balls that I got from Walmart. I cut the stems off of them, and I'm going to be putting them, arranging them in there, as well as some little stars. Okay, now we are going to go on to the little cow. We're going to start with some pull noodles, and we're going to cut one 5 inches long. We're going to cut one 3 1/4 inches, that will be the head, and we're going to cut one 1/2 inch, and that will be the nose. Then I have 2 little foam curlers that I cut 2 inches. Now I'm going to take my scissors and just cut a section of that foam out, just a little bit, because I want it to be a little flatter, more of an oval. And so I'm going to glue that together with E6000 and with hot glue. Then when I get the shape that I want, I'm going to trace that shape out on some craft foam in a tan color, and I'm going to cut it out. And then I do have a piece of fur here that's a 1/2 inch wide, and it's about 7.5 inches long. It will be a little bit long, but keep your scraps because you will always need them. And then we're going to glue on the foam for his nose, and then we're going to glue the fur on, and we want the fur going towards the nose, so it kind of hangs over the nose a little bit. And like I said, keep your scraps because sometimes you measure things, it's not quite right, and you need just a little piece to cover up things. This is 7.5 inches wide and 5 inches long, and we're going to glue it so that the fur is going downward. I'm just going to do it in sections. And then when I get to the end, if there is too much extra, I will cut that off, and I am cutting a little bit off. And then I will glue that down, make a seam, and then I'm going to put a little dab of glue along the edge of that seam, put the fur over it so that it will cover the seam. Now I'm going to glue the head to the body, the top part of the noodle that's not covered in fur. And then we're going to glue our nose on to our head. Okay, now I've got a 3.5 piece by 3 1/4 inch, and I'm going to start in the middle of the head, and I'm going to go down towards the nose, and that is going to be the front. And we need to cut a little strip that will fit around the nose, and we're going to glue that little strip down so it covers that little space between the nose and the side of the head. And then we will cut the excess from the nose off. And then we will glue that down, and it will glue on the top of this a little bit, but I want to kind of even it out a little bit and glue it down. When you're gluing on top of the fur, it's secure, but it is kind of wobbly or something because the fur doesn't give it a really tight, secure fit because, you know, it's just hanging there. Now we're going to do the back side with a 3.5 inch by 3 1/4 inch. 3 1/4 inch long and 3.5 inches long. I mean 3 1/4 wide and 3.5 long. We're going to glue that down, do the same thing. When we get to the end, we're going to cut a little strip so it will go to the end and meet up with the front part of that nose. Once we get that done, I'm going to leave the what's left on the back, just on the back. And now I'm going to take my ears, and I took the fur and I traced around a foam noodle, and I made a pattern and cut 2 of them out for each side of the head. And now I am just gluing them on, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm going to glue them on, then I'm going to go down the seam line and cover with a little bit of glue and cover the glue the hair together so it will not show the seam. Okay, now we are going to put the legs on. These are about 2 inches by about 2.5 inches. 2.5 inches long. Wait a minute, that would be 2.5 inches wide and about 2 inches long. If it's a little long, you can cut extra out, but keep your scraps because sometimes things just don't work out and you get a little space and you need something to cover it up with. Okay, now we're going to put our legs on. I'm going to take a piece of fencing wire and I'm going to glue it into the leg. But first of all, I'm going to take a wipe and wipe it down really good because they're dirty and the glue won't stick. And I'm just gluing a piece into each leg. Now, with this one, I didn't need to use my craft knife to cut a hole in it, but so this one I just punched a hole in it, then I glued the wire in at the end so it would stick in the foam. I punched it in the foam, and then after I did that I also glued around the edges of the foam curler and glued it down. Okay, the reason why I'm doing baling wire for this is because I want to be able to have my cow's legs hanging over the side and I wanted them to bend. Now I'm taking a little eyeball that I got from Temu, but you can also use a little button. I've used buttons, I've used anything that I could find that was a little round, and I finally purchased some of these. Now it's not too good me stabbing a guy in the eye, but I'm making a hole for the eye to go in, and I think that I put some glue on that, but I'm not sure. These really kind of hold, so you don't necessarily need glue to hold them in there, but sometimes I put it on just in case. Now you can see we got a furry little head. Now we're making the ears, and I made the shape of a leaf on a piece of paper and I traced it out onto some foams, that tan foam, craft foam that we used earlier, and I am going to glue the craft foam onto the ear, the fur. Then I'm going to take a craft stick, cut it down to about the size I want, and I'm using these ones I came from. They're skewers, but I got them from Hobby Lobby and they're a lot thicker than they are from Walmart or from Dollar Tree. And so I'm just gluing the stick down in, and then I'm going to take the two sides and pinch them together, glue them, and it'll hold the stick in, but it also gives the ear a more realistic look. Now I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to punch a hole through there, but you need to be really careful because sometimes it's really hard to find those holes once you punch them. And I'm going to take some glue and I'm going to glue that ear in. And I'm going to glue it in just on the side, the front side of the seam, where we put the seam with our fur. Do the same thing with the second ear. You don't quite need them that long, but you do want them long enough that they will poke in and they will hold when you glue them in. I'm going to make sure they lined up really well with the other one, and then I'm going to make a hole, punch a hole with my X-Acto knife or whatever you want to call it, craft knife, and then I put it in. When I get it in there, if it's where I like it, if it looks even, Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to glue part of that stick so that it will stick into the foam, and then I will glue the ear to the fur. Okay, now I'm going to paint the nose and the mouth, and I'm taking one of those sponge round dabber things, and I'm just going to take the back or the stick portion of it, and I'm going to get some paint on it, and then I'm going to use that to make the circles for my nostrils on my nose. Now, when I do my mouth, I'm using a liner brush, but be very, very careful, because if you're using the foam, it doesn't absorb very quickly. It dries very slowly, and it will smear very easy. You may be better off just waiting until it dries, but I didn't. I just went ahead and did it. You can also use felt for this, or you can use polymer clay. I do like using polymer clay, but I wanted to use things in this project that you probably had laying around your house that you didn't have to go spend a lot of money on. Okay, now we are using polymer clay for the horns and for the hoofs. And I'm taking a piece of parchment paper and lining the pan with it. This polymer clay, you really have to work with it. It's crumbly and it's hard, and you think, God, how's this going to turn into clay? But it does. And I'm going to make about a 1/2 inch ball, and then I'm going to roll them out, thinner on one side and fatter on the other side, and make a little curve like it's a horn. And I'm just making sure that they're the same size. Then I'm going to take a piece of baling or fencing wire, and I'm going to poke a hole in there, because I'm going to put that wire in there and glue it in, and that's going to hold it on. So after I do that, I'm going to make my hoofs. They also are going to be about a 1/2 inch and balls, and I'm going to take them after I've got the clay worked and everything. I'm going to roll them in balls, and then I'm just going to squish them down a little bit. And I'm going to kind of point the toes a little bit, not too much, just a little bit. And I'm going to check to see if they're going to look okay on my calf, if they're too big, if they're just right, and they look like they're about okay. So we're going to brush off that fur, because the fur gets everywhere, and I mean everywhere. Then I'm going to take my craft knife and just cut a little hole in for the toes, or whatever you want to call them, in them hoofs. And I'm going to just kind of compare, make sure I get them about the same size. We want them to be the same size. Now I'm making 2 sets of these because when I was filming before, my camera's battery died, and so the whole portion of the cow didn't get recorded, so I had to redo it so I could show you how to do it. And now I'm just gluing these hoofs on with hot glue and E6000. The E6000 will give it a strong hold, and the hot glue will give it a more temporal hold. It'll hold it while that's drying. Then I baked, after I got these rolled out and shaped and everything, then I baked them in the oven for, I think it was 25 minutes on 250. And then now they've cooled, and so now I can use them to do this. Now I'm putting the horns on right behind the ears, and I'm going to glue them on with some hot glue. I'm going to glue, I think I used E6000, but I suggest you don't use that. I would use hot glue to glue the metal, the wire down into the horn. When I get it where I want it, I'm going to cut a hole in it, punch a hole in it, and then I'm going to put my horn in there and glue it down. Now, one good thing about the seam at the top is that it gives you a good guideline of where to put these. So you can, if you kind of follow the guideline of that, it makes it a lot easier to get them more even. Once I glue them, the metal part, I glue the wire, put some glue on that, punch it in the hole, let it set for a minute, and then I glue the edge of that horn. And then I also, when it's dry a little bit, I will glue it to the ear to give it a little more support. And these did turn out a little bit bigger than I probably should have used. I should have went down a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to give the ears a little trim, and I'm just going underneath the furry part, and I'm not cutting straight across, I'm just taking chips out of it because it will be, we want it to still be furry, but we don't want it to look like it's been chipped off. Now we're going to put the cow in our hat, and I'm going to take some chenille. I have some tinsel in the red, green, and blue, or red, silver, and blue. And I'm going to wrap it around, glue it down, and wrap it around a skewer. And I'm also going to take a pin and wrap the top part around the pin. And I'm just doing one of each color. And then I'm going to take some stars and different decorations that I got from Walmart. These flowers also came from Walmart. I'm just going to stick them in. Now I'm not gluing these down because I might want to take this cow out, put it in something different, maybe a different holiday decoration or hat. Maybe I might want to do it for Christmas in a snowman, because, And this is just about the end of this video. I'd like to thank you for dropping by. Not to forget to put the flag in. I want to thank you for dropping by. If you like this video, please hit the like. Please subscribe to our video. Let's see if we can get these videos going and build our channel. And this is the finished project. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a good day.